All right, it's on.
It's on. Okay. So I'm Al Richards, and you all know who this is. This great guy right here. And I texted him a few days ago and asked him if he would be interested in doing kind of like an exit interview.
You did call it an exit interview, yes.
I did.
So yeah, which and I've been open to people if people want to have conversations or inquiries or debates or an exit interview, So yeah, that's completely fine because we had three. I think we had 3 discussions before total, right?
You and I?
Yeah, for the township
Over-
YouTube.
Oh yeah,
Over the last few
over
years.
the years.
Yeah.
At least one other time. I brought my nephew in here.
Yep.
Brett.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a good talk that night.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And usually you've always been wide open to me, at least. And I could walk in here anytime, and if you were in the back, just say, "Come on back and let's talk."
Yeah, I've been open to everyone, including the people that I eventually became not open to, which was just one version of harassment, one set of death threats and whatnot. But only those 2 people over the last few years have I had contact me and then not respond. And that wasn't at the beginning. I put a ton of time and effort into them at the beginning, anyways. But it faded off.
I did watch that video, and I didn't know all of that information.
Oh, the one McCain.
At least about it was Kevin.
Yep.
Okay. And I don't know Kevin either, so, but I understand where you're coming from, of course.
Well, I always start off with the idea that, we're going to have open discussion, like someone's inquiry or complaint, may be legitimate. I mean, I normally start off with it probably is.
Well,
they think it is.
Think it is. Yeah.
Right. And so I start there, and then it's just like, some people, those 2 in particular, it's like over time you end up with it's like, it's not. They're just trying to mess with me. So
There's an ulterior motive.
right. Exactly. Yes. That's
Well, I want to, first of all, just really let you know how much I appreciate your efforts here.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a decent amount of effort.
And
That's for sure.
And I know it's not something that everybody could do. And, so why don't we start here with an interview kind of way of going about things. So you've expressed it in the past, but why don't you just express it one more time for us? Why did you get involved with running for this position to begin with?
I think in a set of acquired moral obligations, right? So basically, studying Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, all this type of stuff, history of slavery and everywhere. and so it's like, what would you do in those circumstances? I think when people look at that stuff, they make that question of like, what would I do? And then we always assume we'd be on the good side, which history statistically does not show that. Like most people are, it does not fall out that way. And so in that case, when I heard about the lawsuit and saw everything that was going on with Hidden Creek Farm, it's like, okay, like a farm that I go to that's in my township with a very local government. It's a little different than the feds coming after you or something like that. It's hard to touch. And so it's like
True neighbors.
right. It's local government with a place that's in my township, in a township that I live in. And so if I wouldn't do anything in this circumstance, there is no chance I would do anything in any one of those other circumstances. And then I didn't plan, my initial goal wasn't like, hey, take over the township. My initial goal was to criticize the township. And that's why I started writing on it. And then I assumed if I could make a gap, because I'd follow up, pretty good at following up criticism. And so filed police reports and the recall attempts and all this stuff. If I created a gap, then that someone else would fill it, right? Because like a power vacuum gets filled. And then it just ended up odd. And we see that now too, like the power vacuum, especially at this local level, it does not just get filled because there's not enough of a benefit compared to the cost for the most extent. It's different than if you're, I guess, at the federal level or something like that, and where they're kind of exempt from laws and things. And so it really doesn't exactly happen like that. So it just ended up like it made the most sense for me to continue to follow up to run. And so, yeah, it kind of grew in this odd fashion.
Okay, so it was your moral obligation, and you saw some injustices, and you had hoped to help change things in that way.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So, how did that go for you then?
Which part?
Well, let's start with the farming issue. How did that go?
I mean, decent as far as it goes, right? So, because if you're looking back, right, like exit interview, kind of like what
Yeah.
would you do differently type of thing.
Or maybe.
It's, there's a bunch of good stuff that has happened. And then because I'm a political reformer, that's my explicit goal, right? Is to be a political reformer. And so when you do something like that, what ends up happening a lot of times is like for political reform, some sort of extreme thing sells really well because then you get a core base, right, that really like supports you heavily. But when you're trying to do applied political reform, a lot of times it doesn't work because there's power factors, and especially in our system, there's separation of powers, there's checks and balances that kind of hinder that type of thing. So if you look at like Newt Gingrich back whenever the Republicans won office there, and they came out with like a 10-point plan that they're going to implement within 100 days or whatever it was, and they got like none of it done, and that's because they tried to do everything all at once, and it just doesn't go anywhere. But if they would have had a 4-year plan, because he had 4 years in office, right? If they would have had like a 4-year plan, and then would have just chipped away at the stuff, I think they probably could have gotten it all done. And so I realized that, and because if the society already has problems, right? You don't have humans without problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if you get in there and then you make some sort of huge change, then problems that you didn't even cause are probably going to get blamed on that change, problems that already exist, right? And then people are going to be like, well, that change is horrible. We should do away with it. Well, and so if you swing way to one side in like my administration, then the next person that runs, it just creates an opening for the next person to run to be against my stuff.
Sure.
And you don't see that at all now, right? And that's, at least partially, there's only part of the explanation, but it's because I just took step after step. So like in my first meeting, I think we had a thing about recording and posting elections. I wrote up a resolution for that. In the second meeting, we had a thing about easing up sign regulations for business. But so getting back around to the question.
Yeah.
We've eased up ordinances for business, for housing development, and also for agricultural stuff. And I think in a decent way where people haven't said, oh, this thing is causing some sort of issue. Now we have issues of people have like chickens that they free range, they like end up on a neighbor's car and whatnot. That's not cool. Like,
Or
keep your chickens on your yard, right?
or in the belly of a fox or
Or whatever.
coyote.
Which ends up,
Those of us that range chickens
right,
eventually find that out, especially if we're from the state.
right. Which that ends up just being fine. That's a loss of your own chicken.
That's your
So,
own.
but if you scratch up a
mistake.
car of a neighbor,
That's not.
right, that's not ideal. And so, but we haven't really created those problems. The problems that already existed being in there. And so, as we've eased up some of these ordinances, we haven't done so too crazy where it's been like an obvious major issue. So, like if you look at the housing stuff, so we went from 1,000 minimum square feet to 750. Now I kind of wanted to like 500, right? So, but it's or 720. 720 was kind of like the compromise that went through the process, right? Through the planning commission, and then it ends up going through the board and stuff. And it's better. So it allows people to be able to build something that's at least a little more affordable, right? Same thing with accessory dwelling units. Like, all right, you can add an accessory dwelling unit. It's not, you can't do a ton of them or anything like that, but it's just a step in the direction. And now it's like nothing's crazy has happened. Nothing's been wild. There hasn't been a major issue with it.
Right.
Well, now you can keep taking it further. And because we now have the planning commission, at least people that I've nominated are in positions now for the planning commission, zoning board of appeals, they are on board with that. Like, hey, let's continue to ease up regulations on like business, farming, housing, and make it a little easier, a little better, step by step. And so the momentum should be able to stay that way instead of doing something kind of wild and then someone running against that wildness and swinging the other way. So it's the idea of like a stable reform.
Good stuff.
That was the theory, and it seems to be working. But I think there's a case to be made that it wasn't aggressive enough. Like it could have been more aggressive.
Yeah, and so this is about you tonight, and I'm not here to attack any of my real points of view.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
And I just want to, this is your moment, you know, and
Okay. But I appreciate it. I didn't know what this was gonna be. You said you wanted to exit.
yeah, and you're soon to be leaving here. You know, at least the term as supervisor.
Yep.
And 4 years is a pretty good chunk of your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's not small, especially considering, I mean, I almost guaranteed to have a shorter life expectancy because of my spinal issues. So,
Would you be willing to share that?
yeah. I mean, basically, I was born with 4 major spinal deformities, but didn't know about it. So I had migraines and stuff when I was young, but I had a bunch of concussions from football and other things, like multiple things. Once you start getting concussions, it gets easier and easier to get them. And only after I got sick in Africa in late 2015, in 2016, then I found out that I have major spinal deformities. A friend of mine, a chiropractor, which I'd never done chiropractic, did because I'd gone to the hospital and like they didn't know how to kill the bacteria. They didn't know the right test to run. It's like, oh, you got some sort of bacteria from being poisoned in Africa, and it's like, you know, it's East African disease. We don't know. They ran all the wrong tests and whatnot. I went through 2 antibiotic treatments that didn't fix it, and then I did like an herbal treatment that did fix it. But I was
Interesting.
yeah, and so I was still having issues, and went to a chiropractor friend of mine. I'm like, something's still wrong, right? And he did X-rays himself after hours for a discount for me. And I remember we do them, you know, and he pokes his head through the door from, you know, he's like in the next room type of thing.
Yeah.
Pokes his head in, and he's like, Jeff, you ever have neck surgery? And I was like, no. He's like, oh, weird. And he shuts the door. And I'm like, it's weird that I haven't had neck surgery.
Yeah. So what's he looking for?
Right, that seems odd. I don't, you know, most people don't have neck surgery, so what are the odds? And so yeah, it ends up like the bones are super obviously out of place. I haven't posted on my website, jeffthinks.com.
Do you really?
Yeah, and so you can look and like just the bones are super obviously out of place. Well, so my major issue is not the other deformities, it's up here. And so like my C1, the top vertebrae is like a wafer that's kind of like pressed up against the bottom of the skull. The bottom of the skull isn't forming correctly. And then C2 and 3, the next 2 down, are fused in the back. And there's a bone that sticks up here, a odontoid off of C2. And so that, because of that fusion of 2 and 3, that block, it's pulled back. And so the brainstem had to grow, it's a kink brainstem, had to grow around that as a baby. As a fetus, I guess, starting out. And so it had to grow around that. And so like if I lean down, a bone presses in my brainstem. And if I just like jiggle a lot and don't get a chiropractic adjustment, the C1 kind of slides from the brainstem this way, just like a couple of millimeters. Not very much, but it makes a huge difference.
How does that feel then?
There's multiple things from that. One, there's headache, right? So I've had a headache from December 2015. And then and it can get better or worse, right? But it never like fully goes away. Yeah. So, which is not uncommon. Klippel-Feil syndrome, this stuff. I don't like labels, right? So
I don't either.
You know, but it became very useful to find the label of KFS so that I could look up some research on it and whatnot.
Okay.
But
And how you could help yourself.
correct. Yeah. So alternative sources ended up being the best. I did not have luck in the hospitals and normal doctors. Luckily, I got rejected from a surgeon in Muskegon, a surgeon at the Michigan Head and Spine Institute, the Michigan Institute for Neurological Disorders, and a specialist at Cornell University. All rejected me for surgery. They said I should have done surgery when I was a kid, and but it wouldn't do surgery now that I'm older and stuff. And so I've got those. I manage it well.
So you see that as a good thing.
Yeah, I got lucky. So I was able to go in, you know, this alternate direction. Had a chiropractor up in one hall, literally the Beacons, Alana Beacon. She pushed that bone, the C1, out of my brainstem. So
what is your prognosis?
Well, I mean, pretty good. The best prediction of future health is current health, right? And so over the last 9 years, I have kept getting better. Kept doing experiments, kept changing things, tuning things in. It's pretty solid now, so it looks pretty good.
Nice.
If there's an association with a heart issue and you have these deformities in the neck, then the normal, because there's like a bell curve on life expectancy and a big chunk in the middle, a male will die between 35 and 45. And I had a resting heart rate of over 100 for about 2 years.
With
Because-
the condition you have.
yeah. So because your brainstem affects everything. So I had balance issues, I've fallen over at home, I've been able to stand, sensitivity to light, sound, heart issues, breathing issues, a lot of issues, memory issues, short and long term. So if that's associated, and I'm not sure, I've had various tests and whatnot, but man, I miss so much stuff on tests. And so I'm 35 now, so you're looking at a very good chance I'd die in the next 10 years. But assuming that's not the case, there's a good possibility, that I'm doing better than that. I seem to be doing better than that with all the progress I've made. Then the oldest male that I found with deformities like mine, I was able to find an X-ray online, Facebook medical group, right? And which has been one of the best sources of information.
And you're Mr. Research.
Yeah, I like looking at all that stuff. And I needed to in this case.
And you love education.
Yeah, and it was very hard when I was having trouble thinking.
Yeah.
But I found a guy that lived to 68 with deformities like mine.
I'm 67.
Yeah. So right in there somewhere. So 70 is kind of like my stretch goal.
You're going to set a new record, let's believe.
We'll see. Yeah.
Okay, so along the way, during the process, is there something that you regret?
It's a good question. There was a trustee at a meeting the other night that was asking me if I would take this position again, like if I would have taken this position, and it's weird. So it's a similar thing. So there's the taking of the position at all, right? Because in that case, I've had a hard time with the time on that, right? So the me at the time would 100% have done what I did. So I did, right? And then the me now, in the circumstance the township is now, everything the way it's laid out, I 100% would not take the position again because I'm not, right? So we can see that from my behavior, from my choices, from my decisions. And so, but if you take me now and put me 4 years ago, do I take the position and do what I did now? I mean, some stuff would at least, but would 100% be different. And then, because I can just look at back at bad decisions.
Well, let me clarify that. If things were the way they currently are 4 years ago, would you have run for office? Is that what you're saying?
I would say no. If things were the way they currently are,
Yeah.
I don't think I would feel the call, right? For
Enough incentive?
the need, correct.
Okay.
Yep. I don't think there would be enough. If you take my personality now and what I know now,
Yeah.
and put me 4 years ago, I'm not even sure I'd run then. So I was going to business.
So let's
meetings.
pinpoint it here now.
Yeah.
Is there a regret? I don't know. You're getting around to it evidently. But,
Yeah.
about anything that's occurred during this 4 years of your supervision here.
I would do some things differently. Right. So I don't have an overall regret of taking the position. I still think that was good. I think it was
Of
good.
anything.
But of individual things, I would just do them differently. So I mean, so there was the big transition, a big issue we're having now, right? With the audits from the previous clerk and the finances and stuff like that. Well, so obviously knowing what I know now, I should have not gone for appointing Tracy for clerk. I had very bad options at the time. It's not like the other options were good. But now I would have gone in a different direction. I would have chosen a different bad option, right? Because what I thought was the best option at the time turned out to not be a very good option. And so one of the other options was better.
Okay, fair enough. Now I'm gonna put something. I'm gonna put 3 little labels from my perspective, and offer you a choice, which might not be fair. You let me know.
Okay.
But when I think about maybe somebody wanting to run for local government, let's say it was me.
Yeah.
I see it 3 ways. I see it either I want to get in there and change something for the better.
Yep. That's what you're hoping the people want that are doing it.
Hoping the people want. Or I'm going to go in there and just help maintain the way things are.
If it's running decent, that's true. That's a legitimate intention. Okay.
Or the other.
Like some sort of bad intention.
potentially, maybe what we might consider not fully above the table, above the board.
Right. I want to like skim some money or something.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself
Out of those three,
out of those three choices that I just came up with?
well, over the last 4 years.
And even now,
Well, because I'm not running now.
yeah, but even now, if you were to run,
I originally, obviously, am the political reformer. Like, hey, some stuff is not good. It needs to change for the better.
you were the changer.
That's what I'm working on.
You were
right?
the changer.
Now, as of now, I still think that's the right intention, right? I wouldn't.
Why do you say that?
Because I don't think that I wouldn't prefer. I mean, everyone, you end up with 7 people, they end up disagreeing on stuff. Everyone's got their own motivation, their own personality.
Yeah.
But I would not recommend coming into the township and being like, everything's good, let's just keep the status quo.
Yeah.
I would continue to make reforms. Now, I think there's a diminishing set of returns, right? It's part of why I'm not running,
Yeah.
of like the big items that I've hit over the last few years and kind of this directional change I've made in the township, or been a part of making. That's big, right? It's large. And so if I did another 4 years, the changes I would make would be smaller. So there's kind of like a diminishing set of returns, but there's still things that like need to be done, need to be changed. I think the ordinances should continue to head in the direction of easing up, lightening off, and if you see like the joint session and whatnot that we recorded through
I watched that. Some of it, the majority of it.
the people in general on the boards agree with that. Let's continue easing up for the vast majority. I don't know that there's anyone that really disagrees with it, right? So like let's continue easing up ordinances, kind of backing off, kind of simplifying and keep heading in that direction. I think that's good. I think that's the proper intention coming into office.
Okay, cool. All right, so yeah. What's the future hold for you?
For me personally?
Yeah.
So this is a major transition, right? And essentially the decisions I make over the next few months are probably gonna have a major fallout over the next few years on my life personally.
Yeah.
And so I have kind of an opportunity here, and I've been reaching out, branching out a lot of stuff to set up potential leads.
Okay.
Right. So I talked to a school in Italy, an English school, about potentially going there, one in Poland, one in Denmark. I talked to a guy that runs a castle in Ireland about potentially going over there, writing some stuff. He actually wants to try to reform some Irish law and whatnot. But it looks like all those are probably falling through.
Oh.
But I had good discussions with all of them, and they might come through in some way. I have a friend who's put together an investment group, and he is looking to buy a manufacturing plant in West Michigan somewhere. And he has all these personal plans in his life too. He wants to eventually have enough wealth to try to develop some health technology. It's kind of his personal motivation.
Health technology?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. From some personal health issues he's had.
Okay.
And so he wants to put in some money for research.
That's a good motivation.
Yeah. So he's been working at it for years. That's why he's in the position to potentially, he's my same age, like mid-30s. He's been working at it for years to put himself in the position to be able to buy some businesses and whatnot. If he does that, we've talked before about me taking over hiring and firing for that company, maybe even getting some equity points. So that's a potentiality. I'm in really good talks with a small right now, a junior college in West Virginia, Huntington, West Virginia. And I'm actually doing a curriculum review for them. And I'm teaching a couple of classes for MCC, Michigan Community College right now.
How are you?
Introduction to Humanities in Coopersville and Holland. Yeah.
None of my business really, but I see that as being, a really good opportunity with your skill set, and you have an excitement for learning
That's true.
and for finding the truth. And I think you would be very good at doing something like that. My world point of view, but and we're different in that regard. But we agree on a lot of things, and your philosophical approach to life and so forth. And the fact that you worked with those homeschooling kids.
Yeah.
and how much you were excited about that.
Yeah.
And and it felt kind of through, but not to your fault. You know, it was extenuating
And it was
circumstances.
good while it was.
It was good, and the
Yeah.
kids were really being excited about it from what you
Yeah.
described.
They were, the parents
And
were
you
very
had-
skeptical.
Yeah, the parents were the ones that were uncomfortable.
So
Yeah.
just at first, and they were good. So can teenagers have a philosophical discussion group?
Oh,
And it seems, and I get why
they're
people
constantly
think
throwing
that,
that stuff around.
but they are, and that's a lot of times when you're questioning the big stuff of which direction do I want to go, and trying to figure out like what do other people believe in, and how does the stuff function.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to try out teaching at a college level, just as part of this transition. And now these last couple of months, I'm able to do that essentially while in this role. In this junior college, they're launching an associate's liberal arts program that's going to be hybrid, right? So like a few weeks online, like 11 weeks online, and 1 week in person to different places. And I'm doing a curriculum review for them for one class right now. And so that looks like that could be really cool, a good opportunity. And I'm actually talking with a principal in the same Huntington, West Virginia as well. I was looking for soft real estate markets in the country and whatnot that I might also culturally like. You know, West Virginia, I think, has already bottomed out because coal and steel have been gone for a while.
Right.
And now I think they're going to start climbing, but it's still a soft real estate market. And so a principal down there said he has some sort of lead into me getting you. Essentially, I reached out to him initially, but now he's kind of trying to recruit me
Okay.
to teach at his high schools. But I'd have to get a teacher's license, right? So because I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, but I'd have to get a teacher's license, and it's highly regulated, overregulated, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
So I have to get a teacher's license, and so there's apparently the program that they might run as associated with NASA in some way. It
Really?
might lead to me getting a teacher's license. It's supposed to give me more information next week. So
Associated with NASA.
yeah. Yeah, which is interesting because I'd probably do like English and history and
Yeah.
social studies as
That's-
my things, not
that seems-
math and engineering. But
That seems kind of out there.
it does. It does. Yes.
So, well, okay, dude. I think you know, time rolls on, and
It does.
we don't know what the future is going to hold necessarily. Somewhat, maybe, but yeah, it's been good to know you for sure. And whatever you do in the future, you know, I just hope the best for you.
I
And,
appreciate it. Yeah.
and I'm even kind of excited for you. I think you're going to do good in some way, you know. So
Yeah. Well, thank you much.
you bet.
All right. Is that kind of end us off here?
That's it, man.
Perfect.
It's about you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. It's good to have an exit interview. I don't think anyone else was going to exit interview me. So
Well,